It's it's a wrecking ball. That's the sound effect. It's a wrecking ball. I know it sounds like we're being carpet bombed, but it's a wrecking ball. Ladies and gentlemen, faithful podcast listeners, the sound of the
Okay.
wrecking ball.
Can you turn it down now?
Huh? Oh, is he getting to you just a little bit?
What do you think?
The sound of the wrecking ball can only mean one thing. That it's time for another Henry and Heidi podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Heidi May,
Yeah.
we just came back from lunch. Beautiful drive around. Good discussions. Light and
We covered
laughter.
a lot.
Always cover a lot.
We covered
Heidi
Caddyshack.
Heidi has a very, very active mind. A lot of questions. A lot of information. A lot of inquiry. Like always wants to know about old Rawlings. Relitigation. A lot of relitigation. Remember when you screwed that up? Yes, of
That's
course.
not.
We
Oh
talked
my
about it
God.
three times. The thing from
not
2
true.
decades ago. Talked about it 4 times last month. But let's talk about it again.
Okay.
And so,
okay.
are
Let's
we-
stop here. Let's stop here. What did I talk about? That was from 3 years ago.
I don't know.
Stop lying.
You always do it.
No, I don't. No.
You're
That's
always lying
you.
like you did 20 years ago.
You.
See?
You.
Should we talk about what we talked about lunch while I was trying to eat? You were asking me a question.
Caddyshack.
Yeah.
And we talked about
What else starts with a C?
chemotherapy.
Okay.
I was-
eating. I'm eating. I'm trying to eat a salad. Henry, yeah. I'm a mouthful of salad. Would you ever do chemo? Like, where does this stuff come from?
Because we were talking about cancer.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to know, would you do chemo? It was a simple question. And you act like outraged.
Can we put the wrecking
What is
ball
going
back
on over there? It's scary. Jeez. But you never answered my question.
You know what? I don't even have an answer for it.
All right.
Okay.
Then don't answer it.
Okay.
What else did we talk about?
Let's see. Stuff we can't repeat. Stuff that the minutia of life, business, things.
Oh my God, this is so vague.
Yeah. Well,
but we
it needs to be vague. And so, Heidi May, you called this podcast together, which means it's time to do one. And so, usually, you have a topic that you want me to talk about. Do you have one today?
I have several.
Well, do you have an order you want to run in?
Well, Henry, I think we should go ahead and talk about Ozzy Osbourne. And
Well, hold on. Well, let's keep the suspense. Unless the topic is Ozzy related. So you want me to tell you what I know about Ozzy Osbourne?
Well, I want you to talk about your relationship with him and when you met him. And I mean, you touched upon it on your Showtime special recently.
Right.
And I know you've talked about it live, but we've never talked about the whole thing on the podcast.
Can do.
Okay.
I'm of an age where Black Sabbath was on the radio. Like Paranoid was on the radio. And I knew that song. I'm talking like grade school. This is like 1970 something. I knew Paranoid. I knew War Pigs. I knew Sweet Leaf. And a handful of others. And then somewhere like 9th or 10th grade, we would bring cassettes on the school bus, and one of us would have a tape deck, and you'd just play tunes in the back of the bus with the bad kids. And one of my classmates, I was like in 10th grade, he was in 9th grade. He's like one of these incredibly cool 14-year-olds. He was the one at school that got busted with a joint. That was the highest crime and misdemeanor at my high school. This kid got busted with the joint, the diameter of kite string. Like there's no cannabis in this. It was like paper. You know, he bought it from a guy in the parking lot of the Capitol Center when ELO played or something.
Do you
And
remember how he got busted?
I forget. He's probably showing it to people. I mean, like he probably was too scared to smoke it. That's how lightweight the school I went to was. Anyway, really good guy. And he brought Paranoid, the album, Sabbath, on tape. So I heard the whole thing. And I went, oh, that's that Paranoid guy. You know, I didn't even know the name Ozzy really. And I thought to myself, it's not that he can't sing. It's just he doesn't sound like Steve Miller or the guy in Journey or Kansas or Boston. You know, he wasn't like Freddie Mercury. He wasn't like the big voice. He was just like a guy who you'd meet somewhere. Like, yeah, I'm a singer. Like, I don't know. I mean, he just sounded like some guy. I'm like, wow, that's different. He's not doing the big, arena rock thing. Little did I know they were an arena rock band. And I just liked the honesty of it. It was captivating, and the music was so intense. And you have to understand context. I didn't have a Sex Pistols record. I didn't have any of this stuff. I was like, wow, this band, I need this record. And stupidly, records were $4.99. I had a job. I could have bought, it was probably $3.99 in those days. I probably just could have walked to the record store from any job I had in those days, like 8 blocks from a record store, bought that record. And I should have, but I didn't. And so all through high school, I was kind of an ambient Sabbath fan. Liked the band, heard this single and that single, like Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, and on. Never went to the shows, never bought a record. And then within 2 years of that, punk rock hit, and all of a sudden you can't listen to Black Sabbath. They're like your dad's music.
I love
wish.
those old rules.
Yeah. Yeah, it was super reactionary. Of course, all the records you sold, your Aerosmith and your Zeppelin, you bought back later when you came back to your senses. But, you're young and you're finding your feet. And so I never thought of Black Sabbath ever again. Flash forward like 2 years later, I started hanging out with Black Flag before I was in the band. I'd see Greg and Chuck and the guys when they would come through town. They'd stay at Ian's place. And I'd always, hanging around as a fan. And me and Dukowski and I would get into conversations about music. And he'd always say, like, Stooges, Sabbath. Like, Henry, you got to listen to the Stooges. Do you like Blacks? I'm like, yeah, they're pretty cool. He's like, no, do you have the albums? I'm like, well, no. He said, what about the Stooges? Like, oh, yeah, I like the song No Fun. And he's like, no, Funhouse. Write this down. Buy Funhouse. And sometimes he would call me like, hey, man, what are you doing? Have you bought Funhouse yet? I'm like, wow. And I never did. This is all my fault. So the point I'm making is this. I joined Black Flag in summer of 1981. And Greg and Chuck kind of sat me down at some point in the van on the way to California after I joined. And they said, to really understand this band as an outsider newcomer who's now in it, you have to understand the MC5, the Stooges, and Black Sabbath. You just, as far as the world of like playing that we're into, what a rhythm section does, like how it sets up and informs the guitar. That's what we're going for, is like this, like really organic rhythm idea. And that was Sabbath. So he said, you just listen to these records and you'll hear kind of what we're just trying to be and have an amazing, for Black Flag, it was always about the rhythm section. Because if you don't, always said, if you don't have the rhythm section, it doesn't matter how good the singer is. If the drummer and the bass player aren't delivering, you don't have a band. And he's right. Those guys were completely right. And so there were lots of, one record player and lots of worn out Black Sabbath records at SST, just like records look like they got dragged 8 miles. And I put them on. And I finally heard the first 4 Black Sabbath albums in their entirety. And it was like when I heard the Stooges and the MC5, I was like, oh, I had heard this music before I was born. It was already in me. It was such a huge uptake that it sounded like had always been with me, but I had forgotten. It was like in my DNA. I loved that music. And I just became this like Black Sabbath fanatic because I got those records kind of like hit over the head with them. Like, a sailor on his first day of shore leave, he drinks the entire town. And I just became like this Sabbath nut because I wasn't like, one album at a time in over decades. I kind of went, and ran at it. And I've never changed. I mean, those records they're just as good as it gets. And then eventually I explored the rest of the Ozzy catalog, Sabotage, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, Never Say Die, Technical Ecstasy, until he finally left and went solo. And so Ozzy, in my life since I was 20, has never been far from my thoughts. And then I got into his solo music. And then you'd see him in interviews, and it was when he was really breaking out as a solo guy, like the tears the head off the bat or whatever, and all of that. He became famous in a whole other way. And I was always curious about him. And so just count me as one of those guys who's deconstructed every Sabbath record every possible way and just listened for too many hours, as if that's possible. And so somewhere in 1995 or 6, bandmates and I were in New York working away on music. It wasn't going very well. It's just not happening. So we're struggling. And we're in this practice place. It's very nice. It's got a lounge. It's got a front office with a phone so you can call and the band will get paged to come into the lounge and talk to management or a lawyer. And so Richard, the manager at the time, calls and I run to the front lounge and he says, hey, Sharon Osbourne called. I think they're friends. And wants to know if you guys want to open a couple of shows for Ozzy like in 2 weeks in Florida. And I said yes so fast I sprained my jaw. Yeah, I was like and I just kind of put the phone down and I'm like, yay, ran back to the room. I said, fellas, we're going to open for Ozzy. And my bandmates were so unenthused because we're trying to write songs. And so we haven't played old material for months. And so that means we have to dust all that off, band practice, full set, get the machine going again. And we're kind of in songwriting mode. So I understood they're like, oh, really? And I hate in any situation ever pulling the boss card. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
Because in a band, it's all equal, but it's not. There's always someone in charge. And since my name's on the contract and I'm paying salaries and for the band room, I'm the de facto guy in charge. I mean, I'll listen to your disagreement, but we're opening for Ozzy.
Yeah.
And so they were kind of like, well, and I went, oh, get out the songbook, start rehearsing, and you better start smiling. And I was so mad. And I'm not busting on those guys. They were just in a different head. I went, nope. Here we go. And so we practiced up. It took like 2 days. We're back. And so, long story short, we fly to Florida and we're going to do a show with Ozzy, a show on our own. This is a night off. We can't afford it. So there's a little club date for us. And then the second show with Ozzy. And so it was really, really fun. We fly down there and we go to something like Mega Dome. And I think it's the lineup where you have the guy from Faith No More is on drums. I think Robert, who's now in Metallica, was on bass. That guy, Joe Henry, was on guitar. He left. Wrote all these great songs for Ozzy, and then he left with the riffs. And I think that's the lineup. And then, Ozzy. And maybe Jeff Nichols on keyboard. He's been a Sabbath guy on and off for years. Anyway, we're told, go get in this golf cart and go down to your dressing rooms, which is a locker room, because it's like a football stadium type thing. So you're sitting in this utilitarian, windowless, subterranean basement with glaring overhead fluorescent lights that shower with like 80 spigots so the entire team can shower at once. It's that thing. It's not built for a band. You're just like where the hockey team or the soccer team sits. You're like, okay, the big time. Our dressing room backstage setup was a coffee mug, which I still have, no coffee, a banana, an apple, and a can of Coke. And we all just kind of looked at it and laughed and went, wow, the big time.
Yeah.
Like no
you guys
water.
Made it.
Yeah. And you're looking like, well, who wants that banana?
You all did.
Yeah, we're like, well, we can split the banana and play catch with the apple because sound check is going to be a line check. Dun, 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 dun. 1, 2, 1, 2. Sound check's over because you're the opening band. And on that level, like you're lucky to get that. So you do sound check at like 3 p.m. You're done at 3:10, back to the subterranean vault. And we're just sitting there like, okay, what's this going to be? And his audience is going to hate us. Ozzy's audience is going to hate us. It's Typo Negative opening, and they're a bigger band. Like, why are they opening? Why we should be opening. Typo Negative, Rollins band, Ozzy. So like, okay, well, maybe we'll meet Typo Negative. Maybe they're down here in this basement too, because there's no signs of life. So we're sitting, doors closed in this dressing room. We're just it's the band and Teo. And we're all just sitting there like, okay, whatever. The door explodes open. It's Ozzy, cigar in one hand. And he just comes in unannounced, like just kind of, the door kind of explodes open. And he comes rushing in. Which one of you is Henry, man? And I said, I am. Hey, man, my name is Ozzy. I'm so glad you're on the tour, man. Play the PA as loud as you want. Anything you need, man, just let me know. Have a great time. Ah! And he left. Like it was.
That's the greatest thing the planet.
He was a tornado of hospitality, good cheer, and cigar smoke. Didn't meet anyone else in the band. You could tell he's a little nervous. But he just, he's there to welcome you to the tour. And he said, play the PA as loud as you want. If you want to blow it up, do it. And then anything you need, man. And he couldn't have been nicer. And the whole thing was like, just made his little hello. And he only shook my hand. He's gone. And I just kind of stared at my hand like, wow, well, that'll be it. I mean, I met Ozzy Osbourne. I think it was that fast. And so we go out and play. And the audience, I didn't see any hatchets being thrown. I just expected people just to flip us off and throw their beer cans at us. Because quite often, when you open for someone that big, like try being Neil Young's opening band. I mean, no, you might be great. They just want Neil. Ozzy's in that. All they want is Ozzy. Anyway, I wasn't expecting anything. And so no one threw anything. No one flipped us off. You just heard this kind of literally a dull roar throughout, which I found out later was about 25,000 people going like, so what'd you do yesterday? Who's this band? I don't know. They suck. But anyway. And like, it's just, you heard 25,000 people just like talking and sharing joints. And so.
But on stage, you didn't feel that way.
No, not at all. I thought everyone was like, "Hurrah!"
They probably were.
They were okay. I mean, like, we played very well. I mean, we pulled it off. And so we finish our show. You get back in the golf cart and you go down, 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 like 8 floors below the Earth's surface. I showered off and immediately hailed another golf cart and went back up topside. So I want to see Ozzy. I'm a fan. And so I'm standing off of stage right. The audience is left. Looking off onto the stage, like from the side. Ozzy's standing there alone with his hands up and like that thing he does where he paces the stage with his hands like he's sleepwalking. He's kind of standing there in that position. And I walked up. I said, "Hey, Ozzy, I'm Henry from the opening band," and reintroduced myself. And he said, "Oh, yeah, man. How was the show?" I said, "It was great, and thank you so much. Your audience was really good to us," and they were. And he said, "Is there anyone out there, man?" And I went, "What do you mean? Did anyone show up?" I went, It's sold out. It's like 20-some thousand people. And I made some joke, like they're putting WD-40 on people just to cram them in. I mean, are you kidding? And I said, "Why are you asking that?" He's like, "I always get nervous that no one's going to show up, man. All afternoon I get nervous." I said, "Ozzy, when is like no one ever like showed up to see you? I mean, like, are you kidding?" And he went, I always get nervous about it." I'm like, okay, interesting to know that a guy who sold 75 million records still wonders if anyone cares. And then
There's something sweet about that.
That's the thing. You're like, wow, a guy who's mega wonders if anyone's showing up. I always liked you. Now I like you more because you just showed me your humanity and your vulnerability. And like, you're Ozzy Osbourne. You're wondering? Then you find out he's a real human being. So Sharon walks up, and she's, all business. I like Sharon very much, but she's not messing around. The band is on stage. Ozzy was late getting to the stage because he was talking to me. He was supposed to be out there. And so I was talking to Henry. And so Sharon comes and goes like, "Ozzy!" And he's like, "What?" Like, "Get out there." And he like runs out there, and 25,000 people lose their mind. And I've told this story before, and that's when you realize what you heard between songs when you were on stage was 25,000 people yawning, checking their phones or whatever. Because when you hear 25,000 people yelling at the top of their lungs, it's kind of terrifying because it's too loud, and like it's this weird human chord. And you're like, that's humanity, and it's all because he walked out on stage, and you hear this. Not like kind of yay. It was like, yay, free food for the rest of my life, like yay.
Earthquake.
Yes. I'm like, it was kind of mildly terrifying. And 10 seconds before, that was the guy who asked if anyone had shown up. That's the response he gets. And you're like, wow, that happens every night, and you still wonder if anyone cares. Okay, I like you. And so after the show that night, I am to fly with the Osbournes in the private jet to the hotel.
The whole family, or Sharon and Ozzy?
Oh no, I'll tell you the whole story. Because the next day at his hotel, before I fly back to the mainland, I'm going to interview Ozzy for some rock magazine in Europe. And Sharon's really into it, and Ozzy's into it. I'm like, me, I'm completely, and I had my questions. I'm so ready. So after the show, after his set is done, I'm going to go to the private airport, get in the private jet, and fly to this like designer island where there's like a Four Seasons private hotel on an island so no one bothers you. And it's probably like, the Medellin cartel stays there. It's like how people who are invisible between shows, like Mick and Keith, like where do they go? The helicopter went that way. This is where people like that go because you can't put these guys in the Hilton in City Center because half the gig will be outside the building chanting Ozzy. You live differently. It's a level of fame that you and I don't, that's not part of our life at all. It's been Ozzy's world since, I don't know, 74? Truly. Anyway, we get in this van so we can leave the Megadome very anonymously. This like kind of generic van. We get to this private airport, and it's like crickets and alligators. It's nowhere. And we get out, and there's like 3 kids waiting for Ozzy, and they've got a couple of records. And I was curious, like, how's Ozzy going to handle? It's like midnight or late. How is he going to handle 3 kids when he just wants to get on the plane and go to bed? And these kids are going like, Ozzy, like they can't believe their good luck. I mean, you've never seen 3 more enthusiastic fans. And instead of going, hey, get out of here, kid, you bother, he's like, hey, man, like I'm Ozzy, and they're like, we know. And they handed him like one of all LPs and a magic marker, like a silver marker, and he does this big cool autograph. Thanks, man. It's like it was so cool to them, and he's not putting it on. That's just who he is. And these kids, they probably have kids of their own now, and they're gonna tell that story. If I had $1 for every time those 3 kids have told the story I just told you, are you kidding? He made their lives. It was so impressive because we're in the dark. There's like no cell phone to light the thing. We're just standing there with a bunch of cricket sounds. Anyway, that was impressive. So we walk out this, no security, no showing of your ID. It's an Uber, but it's an airplane. And you walk up and there's a uniformed pilot. Good evening, Ozzy. How's the show? That was great, man. And it's Sharon and Ozzy, and I think 1 or 2 of the kids, maybe Amy, or I forget. I think there was maybe 1 of the kids. Don't hold me to that, but Sharon and Ozzy for sure, and maybe Ozzy's assistant, Tony. We get on the plane. And there's an air flight attendant. Well, good evening, everyone. Can I get someone some drinks? And I said, well, anything non-alcoholic. And Ozzy said, I always drink Pepsi, man. I'm like that, like him. And so with 2 Diet Pepsis, we fly all of I don't know, half an hour. It's more taking off and landing than anything else in this Rockstar jet airplane. Ozzy and I are sitting across from each other in these tiny little, very luxurious seats. It's like the front seats of a Porsche or something, like knee to knee, staring at each other. And he told me the story of how they made the Paranoid album. And I'm like a kid in a candy store, like, we had the last song, Paranoid, man, and we didn't have any lyrics. So we sent Geezer to the pub because he always writes better at the pub. And he came back and we finished the record and got back in the van and drove back to Birmingham. You're like, okay, you are killing me, man. And so I spent the night in this 9-star hotel. The likes of me never stays in a place like this. That was once in my life. And so the next day, we get up in the morning and I interview Ozzy, and then I get back on the plane and fly back to the mainland. And I think I did my club show, and then we did the other show with Ozzy, and then we flew back to New York. And so it was just, an amazing time. And I figured, well, I got to meet Ozzy, and I'm forgetting exactly. I guess it was a year or so later, I contacted Sharon through Richard, and I said, "Dear Sharon," I think it's like an email or something. I said, "Sharon, I have this amazing idea. It's like 1997. How about this? You greenlight me to fly out to England, where Black Sabbath is practicing, getting ready for the reunion shows with the classic lineup: Geezer Butler, Bill Ward, Tony Iommi, and Ozzy Osbourne. And I go to band practice and I hang out and I have a really good time and have free snacks. And I'm on both nights guest list at the Birmingham NEC backstage, having a really good time, figuring she's gonna say click, because in that time she asked me to do Ozzy's video press kit for one of his solo records. And I said, okay. And Ozzy and I did this really fun interview because she liked the interview I did with him for the magazine because I knew all about him. And we had a lot of laughs. And, it's not like I'm going to, confront the guy. I don't know what I would do if I had to. But we got along. Obviously, he's a very nice man. I think Sharon liked how we
She liked the chemistry.
Yes. And so she said, hey, she called Richard, we're doing I think it was the Best of Ozzy, Ozman Cometh, or one of those. Would Henry interview Ozzy video press kit back in those days for the Best of? I'm like, are you kidding? I'm on my way. Did that. And I'm probably online somewhere. And so when I said, hey, I want to hang out with, basically have the fan holiday. And she said, okay. She said, let me call the guys. She greenlit it. She goes, yeah, they're cool with it. I was numb. I fly to England. You find out they're in Wales, in Monmouth, at that really famous recording studio that has a practice place at Oasis. A ton of big bands recorded there. Really nice place. Rockfield, I forget. I take a bus up to Wales. I get to the hotel. There's a message for me. It's Ozzy's assistant, Tony. He said, hey, we're right down the road. Let me know when you want me to come pick you up. And I was jet lagging, so I got in and fell asleep. And the next morning, I wake up and I call Tony, the assistant. I said, hey, I'm ready if you are. He said, oh, here's the address. Just take a taxi. Come on over. Everyone's just waking up. You'll have free breakfast. I run over there, and the door's open. No one's awake. And I walk into this kind of big house that, where lots of people can stay. It's a residence, stay, practice, record. And I walk in, there's no one up. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm in the right place. I'm sitting in the kitchen, politely staying out of everyone's way. Like, I'll just wait. I should have come about 3 hours later. It's like 10 in the morning. Yeah, and it's rock and roll.
It's a little early.
Yeah, well, are you kidding? It's probably about 5 hours too early. So I'm sitting there, just, politely minding my own business. I mean, I haven't even seen Tony, the assistant, who I met previously in Florida. Tony Iommi walks in. I've never met anyone in Black Sabbath except for Ozzy. And Tony frickin' Iommi walks into the kitchen. I damn near jumped out of my skin. I think I stood up at attention. My voice raised up 5 octaves. Good morning, sir. My name is Henry. Oh, you're Ozzy's friend. Hey, how you doing? He's like, nicest guy. Have you had any tea? I'm like, well, no. Well, let's have some tea. I'm like, okay. Tea with Tony Iommi. And for a fan, are you kidding? Oh, you can't believe your good luck. And so we talk for a few moments, and you're disarmed by how completely friendly he is. Like he's forgotten he's Tony Iommi, and he helped invent a genre. And he, shuffles off. And then Ozzy comes down. And perfect Ozzy. Hey, man, what are you doing here? I said, Sharon said I could come here and said, you said it was okay. Oh, what are you doing here, man? I'm like, okay. Well, I'm just here. Great to see you, man. Like, let's watch TV. And so we watched TV. And he said, like, do
you remember what you watched?
Oh, hell yes. This guy's really funny, man. Who is he? I go, his name is Jerry Lewis. And this is one of his, he's like, this is the Nutty Professor. And we're like watching TV. And I'll never forget this conversation. The other day, man, I had this sandwich. It was like crusty bread and hot mustard and cheddar cheese. It was like the best sandwich I've ever had, man. And if I could keep a record of how many of those heart-stopping, artery-clogging, blood-thickening sandwiches I have eaten in my life, because UK cheddar cheese is like the best thing on earth, and the bread is perfect, and the hot mustard, it's about as good as a sandwich gets, right? You just want to live on them. Not the best thing for you. And I've eaten at least like 400 pounds of that in my life at that point. And I went, "You've never had one of those before?" Like, "No, man, it's like really good." I'm like, "Yes, they are." And then Bill Ward comes in, my favorite drummer. And I was like, "Wow, hey, Bill, I'm Henry. Hey, Henry, I'm so glad you could be here. I love your books. I've read your books. They're so good, and thank you so much for writing them." I'm like, "Okay, I don't know what I'm gonna do with this." And then I meet Geezer Butler, my favorite bass player. So we just kind of amble around the house, sit in the living room, sit in the kitchen. They're just kind of waking up and getting ready for band practice, which takes all afternoon. I think there's a meal in there somewhere, but I'm hanging out with the assistant, the guitar tech, a general roadie for gear. I think like Bill Ward's drum tech. Maybe there's another stringed instrument tech in the room. But it's just band and crew. No Sharon, just the band. I think she's probably in LA or doing something in London, whatever. And I'm broing down with Black Sabbath. And I keep pinching myself like this was some crazy idea I had back at our old office. Just picked up the phone or an email or something and just got into it. And suddenly, 2 weeks later, whatever, ding, look who I'm hanging out with. I can't believe it. And so it's time for band practice. And there's a practice room fully set up, PA. I mean, it is nice. And it's the band, Tony, the assistant of Ozzy, the guitar tech, and maybe one other tech. I walked in before everyone else walks in, just looking at the gear. All of Iommi's legendary Sabbath guitars are out. All the old SGs.
Did you go touch them?
I did. And I didn't pick them up, but I was like, pat. Because as a fan, I mean, like you can't believe what you're standing in front of. You're standing in front of like history. And so Geezer comes in first, puts his bass on, and starts playing Fluff, which is a little bass solo on an early Sabbath record. And I damn near fainted. I'm standing alone in a room with Geezer, who barely is acknowledging my presence. I mean, he's just like getting his gear together. I'm like, that's Fluff. I have to hold on to something. Like, this is not happening. The band ambles in, and I just sit down on the ground in front of Ozzy next to his monitor so I can hear some vocals. And they do like this 2.5 hour full volume concert velocity band practice of what's going to be the show at the Birmingham NEC. Like, no redos. They just hit it like it's live. And it's me, guitar tech, Ozzy's assistant, and maybe one other person. So 4 to 5 witnesses and Black Sabbath. I kept trying to see if I was dreaming. I can't describe it to you. I can't believe I didn't have a camera with me. I hit me with a stick. Anyway, that's done. It's about dinner time now. Everyone's goofing around afterwards, and they're very funny. And so, "Henry, are you staying for dinner?" I'm like, "That's a question?" Like, and so, catering, on staff, everything. I mean, it's not the worst place to be. And out comes this like monster home cooked all day in the kitchen meal. We're all eating. I think Geezer leaves early because he just went home. He lives nearby, wants to be with the family. So he eats, hangs out for a while, and eventually leaves. Ozzy gets into storytelling mode. "Remember the time when we were in the RV going across America?" And he tells this story of they're in an RV right before Paranoid hit. They started in clubs, like at the Whiskey, in 1971. They're in an RV driving, and Paranoid hit and became a mega hit while they're on tour. And they went from clubs to Madison Square Garden on tour.
That's wild.
It's insane. And they've never had a hungry day since. And so they were driving across America. I won't try and tell it like Ozzy, but everyone is weeping with laughter into their food. He's now up running around the table, grabbing people, telling them parts of the story. Like he just grabs you, and then this happened. And like, he's so funny. And the fact that it's Ozzy telling you and he's so animated, you can't breathe for laughter. So the story is that the thing broke down or the thing conks out. Bill Ward gets underneath the vehicle trying to figure out oil pan or whatever, and he loosens something, and it was the bog. It was that blue water in the little RV toilet.
No.
And he kind of loosened the thing, and it basically spilled onto Bill. And Ozzy's
That's
now,
so gross.
and now Ozzy is like, he's almost passing out from laughter. And he had all this blue stuff on his face and toilet paper in his beard. And it's, you only remembered as maybe the funniest experience of your life. Like you're laughing so hard, and like the road crew, everyone eats as a team. So that, guitar tech is there, personal assistant, and like, maybe someone from the kitchen. It's just a bunch of people hanging out. And Ozzy's kind of holding forth. And it was just one of the funniest. You're like, I am so lucky. And it was just hysterically funny. And then someone, maybe Tony, Ozzy's assistant, gave me a lift back to the hotel. And then the next day, I think it was the company move to Birmingham to start setting up for days of band practice and press as they approach. I think they rented the Birmingham NEC to work out lights, sound, and get the band ready for their first show since like Live Aid or something, as the four of them, a full set. And so, they're not taking it lightly. They're not going to just walk out there and play. They're going to be there for like 3 or 4 days sound checking. They even brought in other people to sing so Ozzy could spare his voice. The band just wants to play the songs over and over and over. And so they brought in Whit Crane from Ugly Kid Joe, who can sing his ass off. Really nice guy. And so I'm hanging out all day just to be around the band. Sharon says, okay, I'm giving you a job. I'm like, okay, I'll take you whatever you need. She goes, you're going to be a press person. I got MTV Germany coming in. I've got the French TV coming in. France is only... Ozzy's not going to see her all day and do interviews. So it's going to be MTV Germany will get Ozzy, and all the other people will get everyone else. And just tell them, because they all want Ozzy. Ozzy's going to do one thing, and then he's going back to the hotel. He's going to do the big one, and maybe one other one, and then he's out of here, and the rest of the day... You are putting band members in these rooms, overseeing the interviews, getting the film teams in and out. Because every BBC, whatever, French TV, it's Black Sabbath, Japan, everyone wants to talk to the band getting back together with a full lineup. And so I just became de facto press guy. I can handle it.
Yeah.
I'm just, there's so many backstage rooms. I'm like, okay, you're... Music Plus, France. Welcome. I'm Henry. I'm your press person. There's your room. Light it up. I'm going to be sending a Black Sabbath member. We want Ozzy. You're going to get someone from Black Sabbath in the next 20 minutes. You get 20 minutes. I will be timing it. I want my artist to walk in, sit down, and start talking. Put a mic on him. There's no setup. You set up now. He's walking in. He's walking out. Are we clear? Because the rest of the band, they're there all day. I'm not going to have anyone pissed off because they have to sit and wait. Because when they're not doing that, they're band practicing. They work their butts off. And so I just was the guy hustling people. I go, Tony, you're going to talk to Radio 1 Switzerland for 20 minutes. And I'm coming in at 7 minutes to tell them we got to go. And I've had people do that for me so many times. I could easily do it.
Yeah, you know how to do it.
Yeah, no problem.
And you also know what the artist prefers.
Oh, yeah. And that's why I told him, don't be lighting the room when he's sitting there, because I'm going to pull him out of the room. Oh, and P.S. You're not getting Ozzy. He's gone. He's in New Jersey. Forget it. And so I did that for a few days. And then at one point, they're sound checking with Whit. He's out there singing. And I'm out there with MTV Germany. I think I said, hey, can we get some band shots? So I clear it with Sharon. I go, Ozzy's gone, but you can get them on stage. And they went, we'll take it. So I bring them out. And Iommi says, Henry, you want to sing with us? And I'm like, yeah. What do you want to play? I said, how about Paranoid? I mean, I know all the words. MTV Germany, I think it was. Don't hold me to that. But somebody filmed it.
Wow.
And I'm holding the wireless mic, and I look behind me, and my band, my backing band, is Tony Iommi, Bill Ward, and Geezer Butler. It was one of those moments. Pinch yourself. I mean, Whit's been doing this for hours at a time, but for me, I'm like, I am not here. And we did Paranoid. My estimation, I think we crushed it. At least the band was good. And I know that song inside and out. And I sang it, and dun, 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 we finished. I put the mic back on the mic stand and said something funny, and the band all like, Henry, that was great. I'm like, wow, that happened.
Cool.
Like 2 minutes and 40 seconds of legend. And so finally, it's time for the two gigs, and they haven't played together in front of all these people for 100 years. They're a little nervous, and they get out there, and I was at the soundboard. And they open with War Pigs after this 10-minute video montage of them through the years, big intro. And all day long, you look at the train stop because it lets you off at the Birmingham NEC so you can go home. The trains have they're full of people clad in black from Japan, Germany, South Korea, Kenya. I mean, the world came. I mean, it's every country was represented, I swear. And it was just to see these people pouring out of the train, all in black. You're like, metal. I mean, and everyone's like, yeah, just the nicest. So I'm at the soundboard, and the band comes out, and they hit with War Pigs, which is that first note. Your bottom half just kind of explodes. You're like, it's the biggest thing you've ever heard. Boom, boom, boom. It's epic. It's bigger than you think it's going to be. And I'm singing along, of course. And I'm like, what is that on my face? I had no idea, streaming with tears. It was so...
Really?
That's happened to me a few times in my life. It happened to me the first time I saw Iggy play with the Stooges. I was in Australia in '06, and I'm watching from stage left, my usual perch. And they're out there doing it. And I'm watching the band. I was, 10 paces or 5 paces from Ron Ashton. And I'm like, wow, check me out. I was just weeping, not even crying, just tears.
No,
because it was so good and so moving and everything you wanted it to be. And so I watched both nights of Sabbath. The two shows were epic. After the last night, the band, Sharon says, okay, now you're going to do the video press kit for the Reunion Live album. Both of those nights were recorded by Tom Panunzio. So she said, P.S., you're still working. And now you're going to interview people backstage. Here's your film crew. And there's Brian May of Queen. Go talk to him. I'm like, oh no. And I walk over and I said, hi, excuse me, Brian, who's talking to someone. He's like, yes, you maybe the world's second nicest man besides Ozzy. I said, hi, I'm so sorry to disturb you. My name's Henry Rollins. I have been pressed into service by Sharon. I said, hey, just a few minutes. It's a party and I don't want to bug you. But, you were on the side of the stage tonight, so obviously you're a fan. He's like, are you kidding? I grew up with these guys. I know these guys. I've been a fan since I was, 100 years. And we do the, quick little interview. And he said, by the way, I just want you to know, Freddie loved Black Flag.
Oh, my God. I would have cried.
And I went, wow, wow. I didn't know what to do with that. That was just too much for me. I said, okay, thank you so much for letting me know. I mean, I'm never going to forget that. And so I ended up interviewing all these people. And then I ended up interviewing Ozzy. And I think I've shown you that photo because they had a backstage photographer. And there's a photo of me interviewing Ozzy. And, 20 minutes. And how'd you like the shows? And, he had a good time. And so he leaves. Everyone's leaving. So I go into everyone's dressing room because everyone had their own dressing rooms. I'm going to Kenya the next day. My first trip to Africa. I need food to take with me. You know me, resourceful. I take like 8 napkins, take Tony Iommi's peanut stash, roll them up in this kind of oily bag into my backpack. The 4 tangerines from Geezer Butler's room. Everyone's dressing room had a color Xerox posting, like Tony's room with a guitar. I took all of those down. Well, it's artwork.
No, I know. I love that about you.
You know me, I'm
Most
that
people
guy.
don't think like that.
Right,
But, yes.
but there's like a set schedule. I've taken that. And then like someone on, I think, Geezer's room thing, someone wrote some joke Like it's Geezer Butler who supports this soccer team, so he can't be any good. It's some soccer joke. Took that. Are you kidding? And I just took all the paper stuff I could find. And in Ozzy's dressing room, there was so much food left over. So I just, basically made my post-show dinner from the roast beef sandwiches and the ginger ales and all of that. But I took every bit of usable, storable food, like, peanuts, fruit, nuts, whatever, and whacked them into my backpack. And that's what I was eating in my tent in Kichwatembo, Kenya. And so the trip to Africa was great, but the story goes on. So I get back from all of that, and I'm back in LA, and I think Tony Iommi's guitar tech, Mick, reached out to me and said, hey, we're mixing the live album over at A&M, which is, well, it was down Hollywood, make a right on La Brea. 10-minute walk, boom, boom, for me. And he said, if you want to come over and listen, I'm like, yeah. Go in there, meet Tom Panunzio again, who I think produced Soldier for Iggy. He had great Iggy stories. And Panunzio is just a really cool guy. And so I'm just sitting there with Tony Iommi, who's there for the mix, and Tom Panunzio, and maybe an engineer. And so they're mixing songs, and I'm quietly, keeping my mouth shut, trying to be invisible, because I want to sit in every night I can. So I'm not trying to be a pain in the ass. Like, Henry, do you need anything? No, I got my water. I'm not here. Because I want to see if I can blag my way back in next night. Because like Tony Iommi's like 10 blocks from your house. What are you going to do? Sit in the living room and complain about the unfairness of life? Or go to A&M and hang out and listen to the Black Sabbath album being mixed? And so that's, I'll take B. And so I tried to make myself unobtrusive and invisible. Oh, P.S. In that time, Tony Iommi took a liking to me. He's just a nice guy. During that band practice thing, he gave me a cassette of instrumentals for his solo record. He said, would you sing on my solo record? And that's that Iommi record.
Wow.
And I'm on it.
Yeah.
And I got the first pick of all the tunes. And I picked, I think, to me, the baddest ass riff on that whole record. Anyway, I ended up going there like every night for and on and on and on. I just would get off work in the office and just jam down to A&M and just sit there till, I don't know, 1 or 2 in the morning and just walk home. Like, just float home. Like, I just spent the evening listening to, them mix Sweetleaf for 5 hours or something. But I just hung out and was super unobtrusive. And so, story goes on. It's now time for mixing and sweetening, and Ozzy comes in to listen and hear what's going on with Sharon. She goes, okay, now it's time for you to do the video press kit Ozzy interviews for the live album. And Ozzy is off cigars for like day 2.
Okay.
He's kicking tobacco. He was not in the mood. And Sharon said, you are going to do this interview and you're going to change your attitude. He went, okay. Hey, Henry, how are you, man? We did the interview. And I said, look,
he needs her.
Yeah, she's amazing and he's amazing. But together, I mean, like, I think, And so I said, we'll keep it really quick. And we just, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And then he was out of there. And then Tony said, hey, I've been making demos for a Black Sabbath project. You never know. We might do something. You want to hear them? I'm like, yeah. So we put some cassette, something into the sound equipment in the studio. And we just sat there listening to, like, they did the reunion live album, but there's like 2 extra tracks, like studio tracks, like first new Black Sabbath studio recordings in years. I think they were those 2 songs, which eventually Ozzy put vocals on. I'm forgetting the names of the songs. And he played me those instrumentals and like 1 or 2 others. So I got to hear this stuff like months before it came out. And it's not a room full of people. It's like someone from Sony, Ozzy, Sharon, Tony, Panunzio, an engineer. And I like the inside track I was given was unbelievable. And over the years, I have run into all of those guys here and there, now and then. And it's never, who are you again? It's like, Henry! And they could not be nicer. And the last time I saw Ozzy, we're about to walk out on stage together as some kind of big Ozzy benefit that Sharon put together here in Los Angeles. And it was me and Tommy Lee and Slash and a few other people just like talking about Ozzy. And I forget what, some kind of golden anniversary of something. And she asked me to come down and say something. So we're waiting to walk out on stage, and we're all kind of all crammed together in this room. Billy Bob Thornton was there, but we're all smashed together in this room. So I'm like, like basically facing Ozzy's chest. We're just like in an elevator waiting to get a phone booth, waiting to get like exploded out onto this stage. And we're like chin to chin, basically. He's like, you look fit. I'm like, thanks. And I was dating a gal at that time, and Bill Ward was there, the drummer. And I said, hey, I need you to do me a favor. I don't know if this means anything to you, but I'm doing you a favor right now. We're going to walk up and I'm going to introduce you to Bill Ward. And I want you to shake his hand because he's one of the greatest drummers in rock and roll. And she said she didn't know, she knew who he was. She just didn't know what he looked like. She said, that's Bill Ward. We can meet him. I said, oh, good. So I didn't know if she would care. And we walked over to Bill, who's like just the nicest guy. I said, Bill, please meet. And she was like, wow, thank you. It's so great to meet you. And he's like, oh, thank you very much. And I saw those guys a few years ago because, again, Sharon pressed me into service to do their the 11-11-11 event when they announced that they were going to go on tour. So she said, I need you to do the press briefing. You're going to be on stage, getting them on stage, getting them off, filtering the questions, basically curating.
That was at the Whiskey here, right?
Yes. And I still have this shirt because it was like the 40 years since they played their 11-11-71, their first time in LA. So 11-11-11. And I was, the band arrived, and it's just me and the band backstage, and I hadn't seen them for a while. And, the jokes, they're just endless jokes, those guys. And Ozzy looked great. The whole band looked fantastic. And it was just, nice to see them again. And, they're always so nice to me. And it's just one of those bands, ask any Black Sabbath band fan, they mean so much to you as a fan. And the fact that, that's why audiences love them, because that thing where they've forgotten the rock stars, that comes off when they play. They're just four hard guys from a really tough part of England who, A, were talented, B, were right time, right place, right music. And they just became international mega stars, culture-changing, music-changing people. But they started, Ozzy, I'm not talking out of class. Not one word of this has been out of class. Ozzy, when I was interviewing him once, he said, I was a burglar man before I was in music, and I got caught. I was a crap burglar man. And he's just, and they're just these four blokes who, hardworking, come from an industrial town. Birmingham is tough. It's like Pittsburgh. It's like, people work for a living, and they just made good. And they're just these likable guys who just take the piss out of each other whenever. They're just always laughing, and have written some of the best songs I've ever heard. And one of the, my favorite single rhythm section, my favorite bass and drum duo is Geezer Butler and Bill Ward. And so it's a friendship that continues to this day. Now and then, you and I ran into Sharon a few years ago at that classic music thing.
I didn't get to meet her. I didn't get to meet her.
But she saw me, Henry, and she's always so nice to me. And a few years ago, Jack Osbourne was doing the documentary on his dad, and he said, hey, he called and said, hey, would you come up here to the house and let me talk to you about my dad? I'm like, just what's your address, man? Went over there and did that. And so, you know me, I'm not a person who knows many people, but whenever I see them, I have a genuine affection for these people. Like when I see them, I am so glad to see them. And Sharon always, hugs me and like, Henry, how are you? I'm like, I'm fine. It's great to meet you again or see you. And I always mean it. And whenever I see Ozzy, He always hugs me, and I'm like, God, I love this. And, you love these people. Love is a weird word. I mean, like you love pizza and you love dogs. There's lots of different ways to love things, but they've always been so nice to me, and the music is so meaningful. It's like when you and I, whenever we see Iggy, you're like almost
Yeah, we both go nuts.
yeah, because like that, it's more than just the guy.
It's
It-
all of it.
It's all of it, and like it means so much to you. You just want to say thank you for like 30 hours, and so I still enjoy listening to Sabbath. This is one of those, like, it's an essential mineral as far as listening, and I listen to Sabbath like actually all the time. So it's just it just goes back to this thing that you and I talk about all the time, and I think any listener, I think wonderful podcast listener, you can relate to this. If you're a music oriented person, there's like maybe 1 to 5,000 records that mean so much to you. You can't thank these people enough. You like the music so much you can't even articulate. Like you can describe how much you like Air a little better. But you think you need the music maybe as much as the Air. And if you're lucky enough to have that relationship with music, like you and the Rolling Stones, what are you going to do without that band?
Oh no, I'm being honest right now. My life would not have been as good as it has
Well,
been.
it would be fairly impossible,
No,
is what I'm saying.
I cannot explain. So,
Right. Well, right. But see
Yeah.
how you can't
I
find
feel
the
like
words?
I'm going to start crying.
Right. But you see, you can't find the words because it's beyond description. When you are affected, that's strongly by music. And it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And I would never, if someone said, my favorite album is, by some band I'm not into,
That's okay.
it's totally okay, because the feeling you must, if you don't have that in your life, I think you haven't lived. You can't thank music enough.
Nope.
Like life without it would be
No thanks. No thanks.
I can't imagine it. And for me, Sabbath is one of those bands, when you listen to the music, you're listening to like a relative. You're listening to yourself. It's so close to you. Mm-hmm. And to have met Ozzy, and not have ever had the bad meet your heroes experience with the Sabbath guys. They're just like true gentlemen, totally hilarious, just ridiculously funny. And, monsters of rock, like these people who created a world of music that you get to live in. And so I think about those guys all the time. So of all the, the famous people I've ever met, it's that the Sabbath Ozzy thing is just one of my favorite memories, moments. When I listen to the records, I think of those guys. And, I have a Christmas card from Tony Iommi. When we did the record, there was I was on the Iommi record. There's a release party at Sharon's old office. And Jack Osbourne was there. Tony was there. I forget who else. And we're all given, all the singers who sang on the record, me, Phil Anselmo, Serge Tankian, tons of people were there. And all the singers on the record were given this limited edition silver Black Sabbath cross that came in a jewel box. And it was given to me, and I'm just like kind of standing there holding it. And Jack Osbourne came and said, have you looked inside there yet? I'm like, no, you know me. I won't even ever open. I was given a box. It's on the shelf. Like, you know what's in it? I was supposed to open it. That's what I say. He's like, open it. And he was much younger then. And I open it. It's this beautiful silver Black Sabbath cross that you always see Iommi wearing on stage. And it was personalized. All the singers got one.
That was thoughtful.
Yeah, but they weren't for sale. They were just made for the singers, like limited edition, like 10. And Jack explained, like, do you understand? Tony had these made just for you guys, and there's only like this many in the world, and it's a big deal. I was like, wow. I'll show it to you today.
Yeah, I want to see it.
And Iommi gave me that. And so I have these kind of inroads with these people. When I did the vocal for his record, he was there at the session. I made him sign my lyric sheet. I said, sign this. He's like, why? I said, please sign my lyric sheet. Like, best to you, Henry, Tony Iommi. I'm like, thank you, sir. So I never want to forget this moment. He watched me sing the vocal. I was so happy he's watching me sing on his record.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah, it's if you're a big fan, it's a big deal. And so all of that happened, Heidi May. That was a very good question. Thanks for asking me. Let's see, Heidi May, what's going on here? Oh no, what's this? What? Oh no,
I my favorite.
Heidi.
I never get sick of the jackhammer. I know I say that every time, but I love the jackhammer.
I know, because it's what you do to me. This is what you do to my digestive tract and my psyche. Yeah, she makes me have an upset stomach. My digestive tract is just ruined because of the sound of her voice. Henry, remember 30 years ago when you insulted me or something?
I didn't know you 30 years ago.
Okay.
And let me ask you a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Why do you always exaggerate when the mics are on? About me.
When it finally goes to litigation, I'm just going to need all the help I can get.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, the sound of the jackhammer can only mean one thing. It's time yet again for Heidi's Headline. Yay, yay, yay. All right, so hold on. Let me get my specs on.
This happened a while ago.
Oh, no, relitigating
You'll remember.
the past.
You'll remember.
On the pink oversized index card. Heidi wants to clobber Henry because he turns the card over. He decided to shred a red vinyl album and left shards of vinyl all over her office.
Yep.
Should I tell the story?
Oh, yeah, but first of all, I walk in and there's red shards all over. And
Yes.
What is this? What is this? Henry, you were in my office. No, I wasn't. I said, I know you were in my office this weekend. No, I wasn't. Why are there red shards of vinyl all over my office?
Okay. I bought a record at Amoeba, and I had it on the couch, and it took me a while to start to play it. But what I didn't realize is I had the record sitting over my laptop charger, which was basically like a frying pan, and it cooked the record and warped it to where if you put the needle down on it, it would have like broken the needle.
Right. So you take it and you throw it in the trash.
I got so mad at myself because I went on amoeba.com and they were out of that record. And I just got a vinyl copy just in the last 2 weeks. So I took the record, Heidi May, and I went to your office, and like the guy in the Unbreakable Comb ad at the barbershop.
What?
That the guy holding the comb and trying to bend it, trying to break it. It says unbreakable. I took the record and I folded it in half and it exploded all over your office.
You shredded it.
And then I took what was left and I shredded it.
Okay.
And so there's shrapnel of the record that exploded. And then there's shred of the record inside. And I think I almost broke the shredder.
Rawlings gets angry.
And Rollins is a very emotional guy. He gets all emo. So yeah, that happened. So
well, that was a good story, Henry.
I'm so glad that you asked me to
that.
tell that. You know, as you know, these people mean a lot to you. You know, in your life, the people who made this, whatever the music is. And, you know, it's not the same with every band in your life. There's some bands you liked. Oh, when I was in 10th grade, that was my favorite band. I haven't heard the record in 20 years. But then there's other bands, Stones, Zeppelin, Stooges, Velvet Underground, you know, whatever it is. You know, when you're 80, you're going to be playing those records and still going, oh, it's a miracle. Well, wait.
Oh, that's not the outro.
No.
I can come up with another headline if you want.
Oh, no, it's okay. One's enough. A little bit of humiliation. Hey, look at that. We brought in the audience. We gave everyone a saltine cracker and a dollar bill. And we said, make like a seal. Between songs, when I opened for Ozzy, it was... yeah. Okay, yeah, thanks, yeah. It wasn't so good, yeah. That's what it sounded like between songs.
I don't think so.
Like 4 people clapping. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening. Until next time, my name is Henry Rollins.
I'm Heidi May.
And this is the Heidi and Henry podcast.
It's Henry and Heidi,
It's
but
the
okay.
Henry and Heidi podcast.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you. And so now it's time for the post-podcast chat.
Ow.
What's ow? Ow, no.
Okay.
No attacking Rollins.
Oh, my God.
Anyway, This is still on.